everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Leandra the TBR0, and today my video is inspired by Meg with books. She recently did a video on her channel in which she did a bracket ranking of every 5-star read so far in 2024, with the caveat that she's hoping to have more before the year ends, but just deciding to have a good time and already start thinking about what her best book of the year is going to be. And I loved that idea. Actually, it's also thanks to Danny Dabbles for telling me, hey, there's a really cool video that Meg just did. Have you seen it yet? And then I proceeded to watch it and decided to do it myself. I'm a bit nervous because unlike Meg, I'm not as certain about what my top book of the year is going to be. I have made some claims in the last, 11 months of what I think is going to be my best book, and that answer changes every day. So for now, we're going to figure out what is my best book of the year, at least as of mid-November. So yeah, let's go do that. All right, let's take a look at my Goodreads stats. As you can see, I've had a Goodreads since 2019, and this year is my biggest reading year yet. I am so baffled, although I really shouldn't be surprised because I'm reading far more than I ever have. Like, I can tell, I can feel it, and I've also been doing a lot more collaborations. I've gotten more into manga and graphic novels, so it's not the craziest thing to see that. Plus, I've been participating as a host in a lot of readathons, so I was feeling the pressure in those months to really prove myself and read as much as I can for my team. This year's the first year I was like, okay, I think I can confidently say I'm gonna read 100 books, and that's not even an accurate number. I've actually read 205 to date, and we still have about 6 weeks left in the year. I am really bad about logging books, and I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to make it up to date as quickly as possible in anticipation of Battle of the Booktubers, so that my competitors know what books I've read, how I feel about books, and which books to actually recommend me, but that's not what this video is about today. So if we're kind of breaking this down, I'm not mad at how my 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star have been broken up. I should be seeing mostly 3 and 4 stars. That means I'm relatively able to pick up books that I should enjoy to a certain extent. Maybe they're not for me, but they are books that are well written and maybe just for another audience, or I loved it, but there was just 1 or 2 things that didn't make it a 5-star read for me. Plus, I have incorporated quarter-star ratings this year, so the 3 and 4-star range goes from 3.0 to 4.75. So my 5 stars are pure 5 stars. That's just the way it is. Now, my 2 and 1 stars, there aren't many, and when you really look at the ones that are in there, it's because of a lot of collaborations or buddy reads that I refuse to kill. That I was like, we're gonna see this to the end. This is the way it's gonna be. I mean, for 1 star alone, Monstrilio, that was for a video that was recommended to me by another booktuber. Hate was also recommended by another booktuber. Dead Dead Girls was a buddy read. Cascade Failure, a buddy read. Flawless, Heartless, Powerless, all for a cowboy read along that I really should never been participating in. What else? Strange Sally Diamond, recommended to me by another booktuber. Hounded, I did as a buddy read, and then The Peculiar Garden of Harriet Hunt as a buddy read. So those 1 stars, the only reason why I didn't DNF them was because another booktuber / reader was involved in the process and we were gonna see it to the end. I'm pretty happy with what this says about the books I'm finishing, that most books I'm finishing should be 3 stars or more. If I'm thinking they're gonna be 2 or less, I really shouldn't be reading them. Like, I should be DNFing them, and that would be something I should reevaluate, but I digress. So with my 5-star reads, I think there was something like 25 or so, but I have disqualified a few, at least from my rankings, because some of them are like nonfiction, and I do not regret giving these books 5 stars. They deserve 5 stars. They were amazing. However, I don't really think that I should be comparing them in a bracket ranking to fiction. It doesn't make sense. So I'm going to keep those off. Likewise, I will be keeping off middle grade rereads and graphic novels. So this is a middle grade graphic novel, The Moth Keeper. Brilliant. Honestly, it made me tear up, but I still don't think I should be comparing it to other books. Capless Gamer, the series that I would die for. I mean, if we wanted to do a tier ranking for graphic novels / manga, Capless Gamer would win. I'm not going to be including that or any of the other manga that I've read this year. A Cat from Our World and The Forgotten Witch. Can you tell? I really like cat manga. Oh my gosh, there's another one. Cat on the Hero's Lap. Genuinely so good. I really love cat manga so much. So those aren't going to be on the list, and neither, as I said, middle grade nor rereads. Like for instance, Bright Storm, that was a reread for this year, and I don't need to. I don't need to do that and add it to the list. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the matter. Anyway, yeah, very interesting. But let's stop waffling and get to the bracket. All right, here is my bracket for the 5-star face-off. I have included 16 potential books. I ended up having 20 that technically qualified for this bracket, but I, one, didn't know how to create a bracket with 20 options. It honestly hurt my brain, so I decided to stop doing that. Plus, there were some that I just didn't think were fair because they were sequels, so I was having an author included twice, or I gave it a 5, maybe because of vibes, and I already knew it wasn't going to get very far in this competition, so I just decided to put them as an honorable mention for ease. And those honorable mentions are going to be Past Crimes by Jason Pinter, Sunbringer by Hannah Kaner, A Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers, and Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry. So the two in the middle that I mentioned, Sunbringer and A Prayer for the Crown Shy, those are sequels. You will see that the first books in each series are optioned in the 16. Legends and Lattes, I actually read for Battle of the Booktubers. It was recommended to me by, I won't tell you. If you want to know, you should watch because it's a very fun vlog. And also the live show was really great with the other competitors that I was involved with. That one, I believe I said in the video that it's a 5-star because I think that it is such an important and really heartwarming book to have published, to get in the hands of readers who need it. And I just found it really lovely, even if I don't think it's a perfect 5-star. And then Past Crimes, I think I was really enamored with it at the beginning, and I still am happy with giving it a 5-star. There were certain reveals and certain social commentary that I loved in this futuristic world, discussing our obsession with true crime and the virtual world, how those two ideas can meet together for like a really dangerous concept. But I don't think that I would really kind of compare it to any of the other books that I've put in the top 16. Speaking of those top 16, let's talk about our first pairing. I tried to randomize this as I was adding images, so books are being paired together that I didn't even read near each other, so this is going to be a very interesting process. The first pair is Grave Expectations and Once Upon a Murder. Grave Expectations is a more recent read for me by Alice Bell. I'm actually currently reading book 2 in the series, which could bias me, so I'm acknowledging that that could be a problem, but we're just going to move forward. With Grave Expectations, this is very Scooby Gang-esque. Our main character, Claire, has a ghost friend named Sophie, and they pretty much con people a little bit in her business as a medium. She gets hired by this really rich hoity-toity family to entertain them for the weekend at this mansion. By the end of the weekend, someone's dead, and Claire, her ghost friend, and a couple others along the way have to solve the murder. But what's crazy about this one is you don't know who died because she can't recognize the ghost can't communicate with her, and it seems as though it's a bit of a cold case because the person died last year at their get-together, so they're trying to figure out who actually is dead. Hilarious. It's so funny. Meanwhile, Once Upon a Murder is a sequel by Samantha Larson. It's part of the Lady Librarian series. I believe it's set in the 18th century. Once Upon a Murder was one that I just knew was going to be a very easy read for me, and that one follows a young woman librarian who has to solve murders. Because it's a sequel, it's a bit more settled. She, in the first book, ended up having to impersonate her brother, who was the librarian for this very well-known family in the town. When he dies, she just assumes that it was natural causes, something happened, and she's really afraid that because she doesn't have anyone else in her life, she now will lose her home, lose everything she's established because she's a woman in this time period. So she decides to impersonate him, pretend to be her brother because they kind of look alike, and takes his role as the librarian at this home. When another murder happens, she realizes that her brother was probably the first victim, and so now she's like, am I going to be next? Because this person's going to think my brother's still alive. So the first book was really fun, and the second one also involved this kind of idea of a frame-up job. Someone is suspected of committing a crime when it doesn't really seem plausible. So, I think I'm going to go with Grave Expectations because there may be some recency bias. I'll acknowledge that because I just read it a month ago, but it was so fun and I could see myself like honestly going back and restarting it right away. All right, next we have Against the Darkness versus Diavola. That is so tough. At least in the first pairing, we were dealing with the same genre. Here I have the third book in a YA paranormal series, like a Buffy 2.0 series. It's a 5-star series. I've given every single book in that series 5 stars, which is unheard of because I don't read YA. Meanwhile, Diavola is a standalone horror haunted house set at this villa in Italy. And oh my gosh, you know what's actually crazy? And I didn't mean for this. I read both of these books during the Amazing Race. Nope, during the Amazing Readathon hosted by Bree from Four Paws in a Book. So that was a really strong month for me, obviously, with June, because I read quite a few 5 stars. I was really, really fortunate. I also read a few horrible books, but we get past that.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
I don't know. What do I do? They both are great. I think I'm, for instance, if we're really kind of considering 5 stars, typically I give a 5-star a book because I could see myself rereading it. I could see myself rereading both of these books, but more immediately I would reread Against the Darkness just because it's so fun. And I think in 2024, that is kind of my vibe as far as just a really entertaining read. Not that Diavola isn't entertaining, but it is just something that isn't as fast paced. So I'm gonna go with Against the Darkness. Is that our first upset? Oh my gosh, I thought Diavola was gonna get way further than this. Another face-off that involves 2 different genres, Lavender House and Into the Drowning Deep. Into the Drowning Deep is definitely a more recent read for me. I read that in August, whereas Lavender House, I read that in anticipation of the Amazing Readathon, trying to find books that not only were within my genre or area, which was for Team Spooky, but also highlighted a queer author. So, oh my gosh, I don't know. To be honest, my gut reaction is saying Into the Drowning Deep by Myra Grant, mainly because it was just such an entertaining sci-fi horror. It is chunky, which I think a lot of you are going to be like, Leandra, what? You liked this really chunky read? I did. It was just so entertaining. It gave me Jurassic Park vibes, which is one of my favorite franchises, and it was such an excellent book by Michael Crichton. It still lives up to my expectations today. So I feel like it's got to be that, whereas Lavender House, I gave it 5 stars because I think it deserves it, but I don't know if it's as pure of a 5-star as I would like, mainly because the mystery was really straightforward. I knew who the killer was very early on. I didn't mind it because I loved the atmosphere, the cast of characters, their insecurities, the reason why Lavender House is a prison as well as a paradise for them because they can be who they are, but it reminds them every day that they can't be who they are outside of that house. So I find it a really important book and I do want to continue the series. However, it's going to have to go for Into the Drowning Deep for me. No, oh my gosh, this next one's just gonna be so hard. Small Miracles by Olivia Atwater, and then Welcome to Night Vale. So full disclosure, I've read Welcome to Night Vale twice this year. Yeah, I read it once as kind of a reconnaissance for Battle of the Booktuber, thinking I might recommend it to Danny. I did recommend it to her as a second choice. Fortunately, she didn't read it because I realized after that she had already DNF'd it previously. Whoops. I loved it though, and I did end up rereading it during a vlog to try to get out of a reading slump because I was having a really hard time after the Amazing Readathon. So I decided to do a few tips and tricks. One of those is to reread a book that you really enjoyed. So I did that and it was great, but Small Miracles was just so fun. I think it's another book in which you think right time, right place. It's also, interestingly, another book that was recommended to me by Bree. I didn't mention this, but Into the Drowning Deep was recommended by Bree, and so was Small Miracles, and I think it was one of my earliest buys while reading. I'm usually really conscious of it, you know, trying to wait until after I've read a book to its entirety to buy a book, but as soon as I was maybe like 10-15% into Small Miracles on my e-reader, I was like, I want this. I want to own this, and so I did buy it before I even got like halfway through it. So I know I've reread Welcome to Night Vale twice this year, but it's gonna have to go to Small Miracles. And then we move to the other side of the bracket where we have The Glass Hotel and Godkiller. Honestly, my randomization is on point because again, we've got 2 books that are so different in tone and pace. I mean, Godkiller is a very short journey novel that's a part of a fantasy world with gods. It's just under or about 300 pages, whereas The Glass Hotel is a general fiction / magical realism book, something that I usually wouldn't like on paper, but it's because it's Emily St. John Mandel. I really love her work. I've read 2 other books by her, and this one is really special because I got to buddy read it. Actually, both of them are very special because I buddy read God Killer with Brittany Loves Reading. I buddy read The Glass Hotel with book lover Laura. Had an absolutely amazing time with both of these ladies as we were reading it. So I don't know what to do. You know what's kind of affecting me here is that there's 2 things. God Killer, I read Sunbringer as well. Love the series. God Killer definitely is the strongest in the series in my opinion. Sunbringer is great, but the more I think about it, the more I'm like, God Killer is the superior book in the series so far. And Glass Hotel is actually a bit in opposition. I still really enjoyed it. It's my second favorite Emily St. John Mandel, and she doesn't have a series, but she does have a bunch of standalones that overlap in timeline. Secondary characters in one book are going to be main characters in another. And Sea of Tranquility is my favorite book by Emily St. John Mandel, then The Glass Hotel, then Station 11. So, okay, I think I'm going to have to go God Killer. That's what I'm going to just do. Ooh, that face-off kind of broke my heart a little bit because I did really enjoy The Glass Hotel and thought it was really thought-provoking, but we had to go God Killer on that one. Next, we have The Tainted Cup and Green Fuse Burning. Again, 2 very different books. Tainted Cup is a Sherlockian fantasy mystery, and then we have Green Fuse Burning, which was another book I just kind of picked up on a whim to see if I could find some variety in my spooky options as a host for the Amazing Readathon. This one is by a queer Indigenous author. It's a novella as well, so we're talking very different sides of the spectrum here, but I think oh gosh, I don't know. See, Green Fuse Burning has a great climate fiction element to it because our main character goes to a cabin and she begins to find that the nature around her is encroaching and sinister and terrifying. It's also a grief narrative, whereas The Tainted Cup also has dangerous flora. So maybe they're more similar than I thought, but it's gonna be The Tainted Cup because I love that book so much. I mean, I've already pre-ordered book 2 and I'm really excited about it. And then there's The Late Mrs. Willoughby and The Measure, 2 really great books as well. So The Late Mrs. Willoughby I buddy read with Julie from KeepCalm with Books and Coffee. The Measure was also recommended to me by Bree. Bree, if you're watching this, you are so good at recommending books. That's all I can say because 3 books that are on here that I'm looking at very quickly were recommended by you, and I'm so happy for that. So but you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna have to do The Late Mrs. Willoughby. I love that series so much, the Miss Tilney and Mr. Darcy mystery series. It is just so entertaining, and I have read book 3 this year. I gave it 4.75 stars, but that in itself tells you how high my standards are for that series, and this is my favorite in the series so far, The Late Mrs. Willoughby. It is so good. It's the companion to Sense and Sensibility, which is also my favorite of Jane Austen so far. It's gonna have to go to that. Moving along at a clip, we have 2 novellas. I've been a big novella reader this year, I think, because those 2, Green Fuse Burning, I'm sure there's a few others that I've missed that just simply haven't gotten 5 stars, but that has been a really good short form work for me at this point. But we've got A Song for the Wild Built and All Systems Read. I've read both of these twice this year. I reread A Song for the Wild Build a few months after first reading it, and with Martha Wells' All Systems Read, I reread it a couple weeks after in the same month. So these are pretty good contenders. They're both also actually sci-fi. One's a bit cozier than the other, but they are both feel good, just kind of fun reads. It's gonna have to go for A Song for the Wild Build though, because that book is just so important. Like I felt so seen back when I read it the first time in January, and I'm so excited to continue that series. So that, Moss Cap, as well as Sibling Decks, you guys have my heart.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
It is snowing, actually. It's snowing out right now, which is crazy. Anyways, back to my 5-star face-off. We are now down to the top 8, and we need to turn it into a top 4. This is going to get ever harder, and I don't know how to handle this actually emotionally, but we have Grave Expectations and Against the Darkness. Ooh, what's really fun about this pairing is they're both paranormal. One of them's a paranormal mystery, while the other one is just simply kind of a fun romp adventure story where obviously, yeah, like the next generation of Buffy characters are just trying to like face off with evil. First in the series versus last in the series though. Oh my gosh. This is really, really tough, actually. I don't know what to do, because I need to make sure that I'm not choosing Against the Darkness because it represents a 5-star series. I don't think that that's fair, even though every single book has gotten a 5-star. Grave Expectations was so fun though. And that's one of the ones that I've kind of, there's a few on this list as of right now for my top 8 that I have declared to be like potentially my top book of the year. So, I mean, any of them could win, but yeah, this is really tough. I think I'm gonna have to go with Against the Darkness. Oh my gosh, Against the Darkness is really causing some upsets right now. This is mainly me reacting because you guys are probably like, I don't feel anything about this, but I'm shook. I feel like I've acknowledged my dark horse. Against the Darkness is the dark horse of this because, wow, I'm so surprised.
Hello, dark horse, my old friend.
Because remember, this is the only YA on this list. Everything else is adult. It's also the only kind of like paranormal without an additional type of genre to support it. Into the Drowning Deep versus Small Miracles. This is pretty much just like Bree's recommendations up against each other. Which version of Bree am I gonna say is better than the other? Because we've got Into the Drowning Deep and we've got Small Miracles, and they both are just so good. They're both so good. Sci-fi horror versus kind of urban fantasy with angels and, you know, humor and chocolate. And I don't want to decide yet. We're going to move on. We'll come back to it. So God Killer versus The Tainted Cup. Again, kind of an interesting pairing because they both are fantasy. One of them is more traditional fantasy because it is a journey book following numerous characters. Again, it's got the gods and small gods versus large gods, and just it's very kind of classically in its own world. Whereas I would say The Tainted Cup's a bit more complex as far as the different elements. We have this empire that is up against the sea walls, and across from them, you know, on the other side of the sea walls are leviathans that they're trying to keep at bay. And then we also have this murder mystery where multiple people have died under horrific circumstances, killed by plants shooting out of them, literally turning them into a tree pretty much. And oh gosh, it's gonna have to go with Tainted Cup. I really loved that book, and I loved how it showed how complex a genre blend can be, because that is, I think, one of my biggest things this year in 2024 has been an appreciation for the mystery genre blend. Honestly, these bottom 2 tiers are the hardest. So Into the Drowning Deep and Small Miracles, but then we have The Late Mrs. Willoughby and A Song for the Wild Built, 2 books that I just love with all my heart, and they just gave me all of the feels that I want in every single book. Like, honestly, The Late Mrs. Willoughby was so fun because it had this mystery. It was set in the Regency era, which I really like as far as a mystery setting goes. You know, we were following 2 characters who we were kind of waiting to see if they would both find feelings for each other, so there's a bit of a romantic subplot in there. So it was really fun. But also Song for the Wild Built is great too. Oh god, I don't know what to do. Okay, I'm just gonna make gut decisions at this point because it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you're in my top 8, you are clearly my favorite books of the year. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really, I could interchange any of these. So very quickly, as far as The Late Mrs. Willoughby and A Song for the Wild Built, oh my gosh, I know I want it to be a good decision, but this is really tough. Okay, come on, Leandra, come on, get a backbone. You can do this. Honestly, this is why my best books video is always best book per genre, because I cannot choose. I'll do a best sci-fi, best mystery, best fantasy, and it just allows me to throw out bests across different genres and types of reads. So yeah, I look forward to that video, you know, in about 6 weeks, because that will maybe make me feel better about how cutthroat I've had to be here. I do think I'm going to go with A Song for the Wild Built. That is crazy to me, but I think I'm going to have to do it. It's just that it was so comforting to me, and I could see myself rereading it very easily at any time of the year. I will admit that I'm putting some series bias into here as well, because A Song for the Wild Built is the first in a series, The Late Mrs. Willoughby is a second. I have given both books by Becky Chambers in the series 5 stars. The Late Mrs. Willoughby is the second of, 3 books, and all of them have gotten 5 stars except for one, which was 4.75. Has that potentially influenced me? Maybe. Actually, I think I'm going to change it. I think I'm going to go with The Late Mrs. Willoughby. Yeah, as soon as I looked at that, I was like, I think I regret it. So I'm going to go with The Late Mrs. Willoughby. Now for Small Miracles and Into the Drowning Deep. I think I'm gonna have to go with Into the Drowning Deep just because I found the scientific elements so captivating. I was really impressed by the reveal in the end as well, even though Small Miracles is so good. It's really, really good, actually. No, I think I'm gonna go Into the Drowning Deep. I'm gonna do that. Okay, we're gonna do it. If you ask me today what my top 4 was gonna be, I don't think it was gonna be this. You know, 2 books that I'm sad to not see in this top 4 are actually Small Miracles and A Psalm for the Wild-Built, but I don't know what I would replace them with. I think maybe Just Against the Darkness had a very easy bracket to go up against, but I think I would have preferred A Psalm for the Wild-Built or Small Miracles to replace it. So I guess that tells you what my top 5 are for the year. Into the Drowning Deep, The Late Mrs. Willoughby, The Tainted Cup, A Psalm for the Wild-Built, and Small Miracles. I feel really good about that group of 5. So, I mean, this is the way it works, though. You sometimes end up being faced off against a really strong competitor early on. Look at me sounding like a sports person. But here we are. We have 2 more face-offs before we officially have to kind of look at the top 2 and decide a winner. So with Against the Darkness and Into the Drowning Deep, I think I'm going to have to do Into the Drowning Deep because it's just so much more sophisticated and it did so much as a single book versus Against the Darkness is something that's been built upon 2 other books previously. I mean, to be honest, One Girl in All the World, the second book in that series, is probably my favorite. So the fact that I'm acknowledging that kind of is a shadow on Against the Darkness demonstrates that that's probably what's pushed it to the top. And then we have 2 mysteries facing off, The Late Mrs. Willoughby and The Tainted Cup. So we've got honestly, actually 2 of my favorite types of mystery as well. The Late Mrs. Willoughby is a historical mystery, and then The Tainted Cup is a mystery genre blend. So I'm really not mad at those 2 having to face off with each other. It's just sad because only one can win, and I am leaning towards The Tainted Cup. I think it is, a lot of it is because I'm already so excited for the next Din and Anna mystery because it is being promoted. Again, I've already pre-ordered it, even though just the other day, Julie let me know that officially there is a 4th book on Goodreads for the Tilney and Darcy mysteries. So I'm really excited about that, but I think it's gonna have to go with Tainted Cup. And we officially have the face-off. Into the Drowning Deep by Myra Grant, aka Shauna McGuire, or The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. Sci-fi horror versus fantasy mystery. I do feel pretty good about that because my top genres, at least as far as the genres I'm most interested in, are mystery, sci-fi, and horror. I'm getting more into fantasy, so it makes sense that a fantastical mystery makes this list as well. So I'm not mad at this. Actually, these 2 books combined demonstrate the kind of year I've had as far as my interests go, which is really satisfying. That's really, really fun. So, what to choose? What to be my best book? I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Between these 2, I don't have an issue. It's gonna be The Tainted Cup because it was just such a fun experience. I buddy read that with Danny actually earlier in the year, and it was just really entertaining to try to dissect this world. There was so much to unpack. The mystery was really complex and fascinating. The way that these characters were interacting with each other, politics, the economy, their relationship with the Leviathans, how terrified they were while also advancing their society through Leviathan flesh and blood to enhance themselves. So it was just such a great take on the Sherlockian formula, and I love the idea of mysteries growing from Sherlock in that direction because it is really fun. What's weird though is last year my best book of 2023 was The Affair of the Mysterious Letter, which is also a fantasy mystery that's a Sherlockian reimagining. So I'm starting to see a trend here that's really, really odd. But yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go with The Tainted Cup. And there is my 5-star face-off results. Am I happy with it? I think so. I think I'm pretty happy with it. Would my answers be different tomorrow? Yeah, probably. Because as I said, every single book, especially in the top 8, have at one point been announced by me on my channel that they could be my top book of the year. I don't really know what that means about me. I guess I'm not as solidified in, you know, having one preference. I don't know. I think it's really interesting to kind of compare, especially when we're looking at the variety in authors, because no author was repeated, arguably. Like I said, there were some honorable mentions too that had, you know, another book in the series mentioned, but everywhere else, this is a variety of authors. Some of them were new to me, some of them were not. I mean, actually, the top 4, 2 were not new to me and 2 were. The ones that ended up making the top 2 were both new to me this year. So that's kind of fun to look at, even though I probably wish proportionally I had more 5 stars, because I think I've only given about 10% of the books I've read 5 stars this year, because I've read over 200. We've got 20 here. That's not great. That's not really great as far as, you know, I kind of would have liked more, but that's okay. We still have more of 2024 to go. Let me know in the comments if there was any face-off pairing that you think I chose wrong, that you would disagree with me, and are there any books on this list that you've read that you're like, yeah, those are 5-star reads. I love them as well. So thanks everyone for getting to the end. Be sure to check out Meg with Books. Her channel, her video will be linked so you can see her own take on this concept. And yeah, I hope to see everybody in the next one. Bye!
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Oh,